You've got to hand it to Norman Fell. The guy knew when he had a good thing going, and the role of Stanley Roper was indeed a very good thing. For 3 seasons beginning in 1976, along with actress Audra Lindley, Fell was Jack, Chrissy, and Janet's landlord on Three's Company. Because I grew up in an extremely conservative home, I wasn't allowed to watch Three's Company when it originally aired. Apparently, the plot device of having Jack pretend to be gay was just too darn much for my father, and as a result, Three's Company was on the list of what he considered to be television smut. However, by the time the 80s had rolled around and Three's Company started showing up on reruns, the old man had grown extremely weary of trying to oversee everything. Because of that, I started watching as much Three's Company as possible. And while many young men my age were watching the show for Suzanne Summers, I actually thought that Janet was the cuter of the two girls. And, okay, I'll go ahead and say it, she just seemed a whole heck of a lot smarter. But more than anything else, I was a huge admirer of both John Ritter and Norman Fell. Both of these guys were genuinely funny, and their comedic timing, well, it was pitch perfect. To this day, I can still conjure up in my head that image of Stanley Roper and that wicked little smile of his. Yet Fell had a great thing going, and he did not want to give it up. Especially not to take a chance on a spin-off series for the Ropers. When the producers along with Audra started to apply pressure to Norman during the 3rd season, Fell would politely and firmly decline to even engage in the conversation. He was happy to be on Three's Company. It was a huge hit. And hit TV programs, well, they're kind of hard to come by. So at some point during that 3rd season, the producers decided to offer Fell the equivalent of a money-back guarantee. Norman, they said, if the show tanks and it's canceled after 1 season, well, you and Audra can come back to Three's Company. We promise. Truthfully, from everything that I've read, it still sounds like he was hesitant to jump ship and take a risk. But in the end, he caved. And on March 13th, 1979, the Ropers debuted to fantastic ratings. All spring and summer long, new episodes of the Ropers competed against reruns of other shows. And as you might guess, Stanley and Helen were triumphant. However, when the show returned again in the fall with more new episodes, ABC decided to move the program to a new time slot. And wouldn't you know it, ratings started to slip a bit. Don't worry, Norman kept telling himself. If things don't work out, we can go back to Three's Company. Of course, in the meantime, the producers of Three's Company had to fill the void left by the absence of the Ropers, and they did it with this guy. A big guy. Mr. Don Knotts himself. Don played the new landlord, Ralph Furley, who was an out-of-touch, aging swinger who didn't know that time had passed him by. He considered himself a ladies' man in much the same way that Deputy Barney Fife had. In fact, the similarities between Ralph Furley and Deputy Fife were plentiful, and truthfully, that is not a bad thing. Ralph Furley was a hoot, and with each passing episode, Stanley and Helen seemed to be more of a passing memory than anything else. So anyway, before I forget, let's get back to the Ropers. As the new season progressed, ABC moved the show around a few times, hoping that the superlative ratings that they had seen early on would return. Unfortunately for everyone, they did not. And the show was canceled on May 22, 1980, just 14 months after it premiered. It's okay, Norman told Audra. We can go back to Three's Company. So anyway, I think many of you know how this story ends. When they say you could never truly go home again, I think they may have been directly referring to Norman Fell. Despite his best efforts and multiple conversations with the producers of Three's Company, it turns out that neither he or Audra would be returning after all. You see, the Ropers had technically had 2 seasons. There was a short, abbreviated first season that ran from March to August in 1979, and then a full second season that ran from September 1979 to May of 1980. As such, the producers had technically honored their end of the agreement. Norman could have returned to Three's Company if it had been canceled during the summer of 1979, but it wasn't. And as such, Fell and Lindley were just plumb out of luck. Over the years, all parties involved have expressed regret regarding how the whole deal played out. Fell certainly felt bad, but you know what? He didn't let that get him down. No way. Over the next decade and a half, Norman would make numerous appearances on TV, and while he was constantly working, he would never again have a hit TV series to call his own. Yep, way back then, Norman knew exactly how special it was to have a job to go to week after week. He didn't want to give it up. He really didn't. And at the end of the day, he probably shouldn't have had to. Post Three's Company and the Ropers, there are a couple of appearances worth pointing out, one of them being his 1989 appearance on John Ritter's Hooperman dramedy. Remember that one? It was from Stephen Bochco, the guy who gave us Hill Street Blues, and it was supposed to be funny, but in a serious kind of way. And in 1997, just 1 year before his passing, Norman's final television appearance was on Ellen DeGeneres' sitcom, and wouldn't you know it, for his final bow, Fell once again played Stanley Roper.